I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. My classmates Lyoka, Yura, and I often roamed the outskirts of town, climbed on garages, on trees by the highway, and made up silly games for ourselves. I don't know what our parents were thinking. They probably didn't care where we were or what we were doing. Nowadays, it's hard to imagine 3 boys wandering wherever they pleased and only coming home in the evening. I remember how Yurka suggested we explore a new place, go a bit further than usual. My chubby-cheeked friend was sitting on a fallen tree and poking a stick into the ground. Boring, Lyoka drawled. Let's go to the water pump and get a drink, I suggested. Yura, throwing the stick aside, jumped to his feet. I know, let's go over there, he said, pointing somewhere into the field. Over there? And do what there? Lyoka asked unhappily. I think my mom said there's a spring there. We can check it out and drink from it. The idea was dubious, but we went looking for water. The sun was hiding behind heavy clouds, and the air was saturated with heat. The field turned out to be bigger than it looked from afar. We walked along the path for about half an hour and were drenched in sweat. All I could think about was how thirsty I was. Quiet, said Yura. Do you hear? I focused on the sounds. Water was splashing somewhere nearby. The spring is there, Lyoka shouted, and we ran off the path into the bushes. Icy drink filled my throat. We greedily gulped the water, scooping it up in our hands. I washed my face and neck. It didn't feel so hot anymore. A crash sounded from behind. Then another one. The sky was tearing apart with thunder. It's going to pour any second, I said. Let's get back to town quickly. We won't make it, Lyoka replied. I felt a heavy drop fall on my t-shirt. Then another one fell on my head. Then on my arm. The downpour came down in sheets. We ran back onto the path. The sky had turned black. It seemed like night, even though it wasn't even dinner time yet. Looks like the rain is here to stay, said Lyoka, soaked to the bone. But since we're already wet, what's the hurry? Yura raised his arms and did a few dance moves. I laughed, but at the next crack of thunder, my heart sank. Maybe we should go home after all? Ruzia's scared. Ruzia's scared. Lyoka sang a cheeky song about me that he'd made up himself. I'm not scared, I defended myself. It's just cold. My classmates noticed a tree standing alone in the middle of the field. It seemed like a white oak or maybe a linden. Hard to tell from a distance. They say lightning strikes the tallest object, Yura said. Did you hear that, Ruslin? Better squat down, Lyoka laughed. Lightning streaked across the dark sky. We were morbidly curious whether a bolt would hit that lonely tree or not. The wind bent the tall rye toward the ground. Clumps of mud stuck to my feet and sandals. Streams ran from my clothes and hair. We counted the seconds from the flash to the noisy crash of thunder. Whoa, I said. Did you hear that? Sounded like it struck really close. I didn't even get to count to 7. You count too slowly, Yura replied. I got to 9. And I got to 12, Lyoka boasted. You can't rush it either, I argued. Remember how Tatiana Vasilievna taught us? You have to say, and between the numbers, then it's right. Yeah, and you probably were saying and instead of and. That's why you got 6, Yura said, wringing water out of his t-shirt. Time to go home, I reminded them. Thunder crashed again. I looked closely at the tree. Missed again. I don't know what we were hoping for. That tree had been growing there for decades. It had survived hundreds of rainy days. Why would it suddenly splinter from a lightning strike for our amusement? And then, suddenly, I caught sight of some figure at the very edge of the field. Just a dark, motionless dot. Looked like a person. I didn't think anything of it, just noticed it. But then lightning flashed again, and I thought I saw the figure instantly move from the edge of the field. Now it was closer. I could make out that this dot had legs and arms. So, a person. But they couldn't have jumped like a grasshopper, covering such a distance in a second. I started watching that dot, waiting for it to move again. The guys were joking around, not paying attention to me. Thunder rumbled, and again that dark spot moved immediately, by about 30 paces. It became clear to me right then. It only moved with the sound of thunder. Now I could make out a head, arms, a female figure in a long skirt. and it seemed she had something in her hand, like a pole. I shouted to my friends, guys, look over there. Do you see the old woman?" Lyoka and Yurka ran over to me. "So what?" one of them asked. "Watch when the lightning flashes next." I didn't get to finish. Lightning flashed over the field. I tried to follow the movement with my eyes, but this woman was as fast as the lightning itself. Now she had moved another 30 paces. I could now see a pale spot for a face and the folds of a long, dark skirt. It was definitely a woman with a long pole in her hand. "How did she run like that?" Yurik asked, his voice trembling. We watched, unblinking, waiting for the next thunderclap. And again thunder, and the dark figure moved to the middle of the field. It was a hunched old woman. She stood motionless, leaning on the pole. Thunder. Now she was even closer. Rainwater streamed from her soaked clothes. Her mouth was open and twisted. Her eyes had no discernible pupils. "It's a ghost," Lyoka shouted, grabbing my shoulder hard. I didn't know where to go. My knees shook with fear. "Mom," Yura whimpered. And again thunder. Now the old woman was close enough to make out her features. Horrible features. Her mouth was a black hole like a mouse burrow. A wrinkled, bluish face. Light-colored eyes with invisible pupils. A few gray strands on a bald head. The old woman held in her hand the handle of some tool, charred at the end. With every lightning strike, she got closer to us. And again thunder. "Let's get out of here," I yelled. And we ran. We raced all the way back to town, overtaking each other. By then, the rain had lightened and the thunder had subsided. I looked back. I was afraid the old woman was still chasing us. My heart pounded anxiously. I wanted to get home quickly to my parents. It was always calmer near them. There were deep puddles in the town. My wet t-shirt made my body shiver from the cold. Lights came on in the apartment windows. Lyoka and I said goodbye to Yura and walked down the dusky street. Just the two of us. "I'm probably going to get it from my mom," I sighed sadly, "for being out until evening all wet. If I get sick, she'll kill me. Just tell her we were at Yurka's house, and you only got wet on the way back," Lyoka suggested. "Don't say we went to the field or what we saw there." That's what I did. Luckily, my mom didn't check up on the story. That night, I had a hard time falling asleep. I kept remembering the day. It seemed frightening and yet somehow unreal. The raindrops became fewer. The bad weather subsided. Along with nature, I fell asleep too. But for many years after that, I was afraid of thunderstorms. I would run to my parents in the middle of the night and ask to sleep in their bed. I didn't walk in the rain anymore every time thunder cracked. My heart seemed to stop for a moment. By the end of that same summer, our family moved to another city because of my father's job. A new school, new friends, a completely different life. Starting from scratch. In that hustle and bustle, the scary memories faded. Time passed and adolescence arrived. I finally discarded my childhood fears, forgot all the tall tales, and became a terrible skeptic. I remained one for many years. Since then, I've grown a lot in every sense. I'm now 6'3", the kind of guy who hits his head on light fixtures. After school, I enrolled in a culinary academy. Yeah, my mom almost lost it when I decided to dedicate my life to cooking. Did I know anything about it? Hardly. I just liked good food, liked the aesthetics of high cuisine. And I didn't fully understand myself why I ended up there. But I felt genuine interest and even delight. I had already forgotten about my school buddies, my little hometown. I made friends with my classmates. We were constantly coming up with things, experimenting. We were just budding artists in the art of cuisine. Within the academy walls, I met a wonderful girl named Vera. She was a couple of years behind me. We met on the stairs. The student crashed into me and fell. I didn't even budge. I looked down from my height at her tiny face and broke into a smile. From then on, we started getting closer. We walked in parks, went to cafes. We delighted together when something tasted good. Vera made simply amazing baked goods, which she fed me. I even gained a few kilos, although I always thought a lanky guy like me wasn't prone to getting fat. But now, Love handles were betrayingly spilling over the waistband of my pants. I really didn't want to be overweight, so I started going for walks every evening. Sometimes alone, sometimes with Vera. With Vera in. Well, so my jeans would button again. Okay, that's just a silly joke. Of course, I meant my girlfriend. Vera was of average female height. I think around 5'3", which made walking together inconvenient. She was always looking up, and I had to tilt my head down to hear her quiet voice. That summer turned out to be rainy. We got soaked an endless number of times from sudden downpours. Vera splashed in puddles with her sandals. I thought it was high time I got into the habit of carrying an umbrella. We wandered to the edge of the city. Ahead was only the wide riverbank, a green landscape where there was nothing to do in such weather. It was time to turn back. The rain was only getting heavier, and the clouds were rumbling. I pulled Vera by the hand, but she said, "Let's stand under the tree, maybe it'll let up." We stood watching the leaden clouds, and it didn't even occur to me to remember that long-ago childhood incident. Those events lay buried deep, deep down. But then lightning flashed. Thunder rolled across the sky, and a terrible mirage appeared before my eyes. It was like a childhood dream resurrected from oblivion. Down by the river's edge, a dark figure appeared, the same black spot that I had seen as a child. It stood motionless against the backdrop of the restless current. I stared at it and stopped listening to my girlfriend. Whoa, that was close. Could it hit us? Thunder. The creature moved. This wasn't a random person. It was that same shadow. A hunched figure, a long skirt, and a pole in hand. Insanity. Vera fell silent. I squeezed her hand. My heart was pounding against my ribs. My breath caught. A flash hit my eyes, and again soul-rending thunder shook the air. The figure moved further up the bank. I could see a bluish face, a twisted open mouth, gray, wet strands of hair. Damn, it's that same old woman. Impossible. Ruslan, did you see that? I thought that old woman just moved. She was standing over there, and now she's there. Vera pointed her finger at the thing. But did you see it? Why are you quiet? Thunder again. The old woman with the charred stick moved higher up. She disappeared from one spot and appeared in another. That face. A dead face, frozen in pain and fear. A black, toothless mouth. Eyes with barely noticeable pupils. Am I tripping or something? Vera asked in horror. I finally snapped out of my stupor and answered, "No, you're not tripping. Let's get out of here, quick." And we ran. I dragged the girl by the hand. Her sandals nearly flew off. She was terrified just from seeing my fear. She probably wondered what could have happened to scare even a big guy like me. Finally, we reached a busy street and sat down on a wet bench to catch our breath. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still rumbling. Those sounds echoed in my body with a nervous tremor. Vera put her hand on my shoulder. Ruslan. I surfaced from the whirlpool of my thoughts. "Ah, you got so scared?" the girl asked. "Did we just see some old woman?" "The thing is, I've seen that old woman before," I said. "When?" the girl asked. "A long time ago when I was a kid." "And what was it?" the girl cautiously inquired. The old memory flashed before my eyes, and for the first time in my life I spoke about it. We were walking with classmates and saw that old woman in the field. I'm sure it was her. It was during a thunderstorm then too. She moved from place to place after every lightning strike. "And what happened after that?" Vera asked. I shook my head. "Nothing. You just saw her and that's it?" The girl suddenly smiled, as if it were nothing. I nodded. "Yeah, I thought it was a false memory. Kids can imagine all sorts of things. But now I understand it was all true." "Spooky," Vera said quietly. "And after that, appearance, did anything bad happen in your life? Maybe it's some kind of sign?" I thoughtfully shrugged. "No, nothing bad happened, really. Then why be so afraid?" Vera smiled again. "Yeah, probably nothing to be afraid of." I gave a wry smile, even though it didn't seem amusing to me at all. Vera had a light soul. She bounced back quickly from anything. I was the one who needed time. I don't know how, but I, an adult, started being afraid of thunderstorms again. The next day it rained again with lightning flashing. I sat at home, staring out the rain-streaked window, forgetting everything except that old woman. And who was she anyway? An old witch in ancient clothes with a charred stick? As a kid, I thought she was a ghost. Maybe she is. A woman who died in the field because of a thunderstorm, walking in the rain, carrying a scythe on her shoulder, and then a lightning bolt struck the blade and killed the old woman. That's how mystics would reason. A lost spirit that remained on this earthly plane. Since then, she appears in bad weather. Maybe the old woman is just a suffering soul, and there's no need to be afraid of her? The following morning, the cursed rain was still pouring. I had somewhat recovered from the shock and finally noticed that Vera hadn't answered any of my messages. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. I started feeling uneasy. I decided to take a shower, brush my teeth, and go see her myself. She lived nearby, and just as I stepped away to the bathroom, my phone rang. Finally. But it wasn't her, it was her friend, Christina. I answered the call. Hello. A worried voice sounded through the receiver. Ruslan, where's Vera? I can't reach her. My throat tightened. I can't reach her either, she's not answering me. I don't understand, Christina said. I dropped everything, got dressed, and rushed out of the house. I ran to my girlfriend's place, ignoring the downpour. Christina also raced to her building. We went up to the second floor together. My girlfriend's friend started pounding on the door. Vera, are you home? Open up. Quiet, I said, dialing Vera's number. A muffled ringtone sounded from behind the door. Her phone was in there. She's there, I said with a tremor, understanding what that could mean. This isn't like her. Call the police, Christina said and started banging on the door again. The police arrived. They resisted for a long time, saying there were no grounds to break the lock. Then they finally agreed and called a locksmith. He opened the apartment in 2 minutes. Christina and I were told to stay in the hallway. I couldn't stand still and followed the police inside. The curtains in Vera's only room were billowing. Rain was lashing through the wide-open window. I didn't notice the body right away. The girl was lying on the floor by the coffee table. Vera? I wanted to rush to her, but someone grabbed my arm. What's wrong with her? She's dead, the sergeant said. I could see that for myself. I just didn't believe it. The right half of the girl's face was burned down to the flesh. Her jaw was twisted to the side. Her eyes were fixed and looked like doll's eyes. I'm no expert, but I knew immediately that's what electrocution looked like. She was dead. Those words echoed endlessly in my head. Dead. The girl I loved was dead, and I never even got to tell her. It all seemed too much. Death had so disfigured her beautiful face. How sad that I would remember her like this. The preliminary investigation version. Died from a lightning strike. I was sure that wasn't it. That old woman killed her. Without a doubt, it was her. I screamed about it, but no one listened. They thought it was the madness of grief speaking through me. And it was. In my right mind, I wouldn't have told anyone about that terrible old woman who appears during thunderstorms. Dark days full of sorrow followed. I simply didn't know how to go on living. I sat at home and wandered the streets aimlessly. I saw no future. I had to get through it. But how? One evening, rain began whispering outside, followed by a flash of lightning. My dark room was illuminated for a moment by a bluish light. I got up from the sofa, approached the window, and pulled back the curtain. The courtyard was flooded with rain, empty. Thunder again. I wasn't even surprised when a sinisterly familiar figure appeared at the far end of the yard. A dark spot with a pole in hand. Now she had come for me. My heart fluttered in my chest, but my mind now existed separately from my emotions. I opened the window. The fresh smell of rain burst into my stuffy room. Another crooked lightning bolt on the horizon flashed into my eyes. The old woman was now frozen by the dumpster area. She was still far away. Vera, on her last evening, must have also stood by the window watching this figure. Was she scared, or did she watch with curiosity? Thunder. The old woman was now by the parking lot. It seemed the light of the storm shone in her eyes. "Come on. Take me," I whispered with cold lips. And again thunder. The dreadful old woman was now right under my window, looking up. I couldn't bear that terrible face, so I turned away. One more flash and she would be here. With that thought, I shut my eyes tight. I waited for the fatal strike. Well, when the rain rustled, but the lightning stopped flashing. The storm was over. I suddenly felt relief. The moment of mortal danger had a sobering effect. It seems I hadn't completely lost interest in life yet. So I had to pull myself together. Wake up in the mornings and not lie in bed until evening staring at the ceiling. Vera probably wouldn't have wanted me to sink into endless depression. That year, I didn't see the horrible old woman again. And the next summer was abnormally hot. No thunderstorms. But this June, there were rains again, flooding cities. The pain of loss is still with me. There hasn't been a day when I haven't remembered Vera. I never met another girl. I don't know why I suddenly thought about returning to my roots. It happened spontaneously. I just bought a train ticket and went to my hometown on a day off. All these years, I hadn't been in touch with any of my first friends. So I arrived. Everything had changed so much there. As everywhere, chain stores had sprung up, some cafes had opened, roads had become smoother. I wandered the streets, trying to remember where my old acquaintances lived. And suddenly, some guy with a beard approached me. "Ruslan, is that you? Can't believe my eyes, you're so tall now." I stared at his face for a long time and couldn't recognize him. Then I remembered. It was my neighbor, whom I'd known since early childhood. I don't know why he decided to come over. I shook his hand. "Hi, Dimka. Long time no see. I'm glad to see you. You're back?" he asked. "No, not really," I answered sadly. "Visiting relatives?" Dimka pressed. I shook my head. "I want to see my classmates, find out how they're doing." "Ah, like a reunion?" he asked. I answered, "No, we didn't arrange anything. I want to find them if they're still here." "Got it," said Dimka. "Well, okay, glad I ran into you." I held him back for a moment longer. "Listen, do you happen to remember Lyashka Kark and Yurka Masterkov? I'd like to see them." The guy nodded and answered, "Yeah, I remember them." "Where are they now?" I asked. "You don't know?" he said with a heavy heart. "They're, well, at the cemetery." "I see." It wasn't unexpected for me. I had guessed the answer might be like that. "They got struck by lightning when they were still kids," the guy said grimly. "And you lived all this time not knowing." "Huh? Well, that's the news. Sorry, you were friends." I was silent and he continued. "You know, I remember like it was yesterday. It was a rainy summer, just like now. They kept going for walks in that field. Well, the lightning got them, both of them. Their charred bodies were found outside town. The whole town talked about it, it was even in the newspaper. Yeah, I lived for several years and didn't know about this. The old woman took them that year when my family moved. Looks like she missed me and searched for a long time. Finally found me. Now the warm days have come, but more rain is forecast. I don't know if I'm destined to survive this summer."